In and out of the Beltway, from large cities to small towns to the rural heartland, from the flagship station in Southwest Florida.
Welcome to another edition of Inside the News, and my name is Guy Wayman. With me is Ben Brunson. He's the author of The Falstaff Enigma and Esther Sling. You can find him at benbrunson.com. And then Frank Vernuccio, the editor-in-chief of the New York Analysis of Policy and Government, writer and the voice of the syndicated radio feature Minute Report for America. You can find Frank at usagovpolicy.com. Hi, Frank.
Great to be with you both.
Hey, Ben.
Hey, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be back on a Tuesday.
Okay, Ben, we're going to toss this first one to you. We just knocked out about 100 some people down in Somalia of the bad guys. We have not heard much of the attacks on ISIS in recent days. It was kind of refreshing to see this, but yet we haven't even gone nearly far enough, have we?
No, we are getting more engaged in Africa all the time. The U.S. African Command has becoming a large military command that may rival Central Command, which is, of course, our Mideast operations in the near future. And the reason why is because ISIS and militant Islamics are targeting North Africa and view that as a very fertile stomping ground for them, and they are trying to spread their Islamic jihad throughout North Africa. We have talked many times about how our policies under this administration have created a void which unfortunately has been filled largely by militant Islam. And one area that has been true is Libya, where we used NATO forces to help oust Muammar Gaddafi, and then we abandoned Libya to its fate. And unfortunately, that has turned out pretty poorly for us because Libya has become a hotbed of ISIS activity among other Islamic groups. We have groups Boko Haram operating in places like Somalia and throughout the North African region. Our presence keeps growing. The airstrike in Somalia, we hit a training base. We killed somewhere around 150 people, very successful. But what's notable about that raid, it was a very large coordinated raid. It involved F-15 Strike Eagles, drones. It was a pretty large operation. Frankly, as large an airstrike as we've done in that part of the world ever. It is a symptom of how much our involvement is growing as we look at the seriousness of the situation. In Libya, ISIS has taken large parts of the coastal region, and it is spreading. There was a recent militant attack just a few days ago in Tunisia along a border town. So the attacks in Tunisia are escalating. Libya is still, we really don't have a viable alternative to Islamic Jihad. We have various factions that are fighting each other. Some, it's kind of like Syria. Some factions are a little less militant than others, more pragmatic, perhaps groups that we could back. But because we have left Libya in a void, there are no institutions for Libya to turn back on. There was nothing left after Gaddafi was overthrown. So the country is in chaos, and in this chaos breeds, unfortunately, a happy hunting ground for militant Islam. So this is becoming more serious. Nigeria has been threatened recently by Islamic groups. And we are increasing. We are starting to send some of our special forces to train elite Nigerian units now. So we're going to see increased U.S. involvement, a larger U.S. special forces presence throughout Africa as we train units in an attempt to slow down the spread of jihad.
You know, Frank, Ben makes some great points. Here we just had this little attack on Afghanistan that was al-Qaeda's base of operations, and it just keeps on spreading, and now we're down in Somalia, and the DOD had to have planned some of this with the White House.
Well, the name of the group that we hit was called the Shabab, and the reason we hit it was there was a graduation ceremony for fighters who would obviously present a threat to American interest in the area. But Ben brings up a question that I think is the salient question in all of this, which is, what were we doing in Libya overthrowing Muammar Gaddafi? Gaddafi was no longer a threat. He was not a terrorist any longer, did not deal with terrorists any longer, had given up his nuclear program, and essentially, and again, I'm not saying that he was in any way a saint, but he was on at least the issue of countering ISIS, the Muslim Brotherhood, and so forth, was on the same side as we were. It doesn't make a lot of sense what we were doing there. We still haven't received any explanation from the White House why we use scarce American resources to overthrow Muammar Gaddafi, and you can only pair that with questions about why the United States was so eager to get rid of the original regime in Egypt to replace it with a Muslim Brotherhood regime. It does seem that so much of the actions during the Obama administration has been contrary to American interest. Now, obviously, the strikes against Shabab in Somalia made sense. That was the right thing to do. But it seems we create problems and then struggle to solve the problems that we created. You can also go back and say the same thing about ISIS itself. ISIS was formed as a result of the vacuum created when President Obama prematurely withdrew American forces from Iraq. If President Obama had not done that, there would be no ISIS to the extent that we know it today. We see the same thing about to happen in Afghanistan. The president, of course, famously announced a withdrawal date in Afghanistan, which allowed the Taliban to really ramp up its strategy to make plans for how it would take over. Now, the president, of course, is going back on that a little bit due to pressure because the example from Iraq was so salient. But clearly, we will be facing the same problem in Afghanistan that we did in Iraq, and precisely for the same reason.
You know, Frank, you make a great point, and I think it comes back to one word of miscalculation, that this administration has miscalculated every step in the Middle East well, actually everything they've done, even in the United States. I mean, but I want to get in the domestic side in the next segment. But, Ben, isn't that a good word, miscalculation?
Well, misunderstanding, misinterpretation, miscalculation, a lack of strategy. This president came into office believing in his heart that the United States has been the source of a lot of the evil that's gone on, certainly in the Middle East. He has a proclivity towards the Middle East because of his background and his Muslim upbringing, even though he is now a Christian. But the reality is that we have withdrawn, and where we have withdrawn, the void has been filled by the wrong people. And we don't have a strategy to respond to that. We're responding piecemeal, just like our escalating involvement in North Africa. We're responding, reacting to what's going on. We're reacting to advances by militant groups instead of building any type of strategy. We fortunately made one right decision, in that the president looked the other way when al-Sisi took control of Egypt back from Morsi, from the Muslim Brotherhood, and that was a step in the right direction. And look, it's not great. Egypt is not a democracy. It's not like al-Sisi is going to be voted out of office anytime soon. But the fact is that we looked at we faced the prospect of Egypt becoming an Islamic State under the Muslim Brotherhood. So fortunately, that was reversed. But we really don't have a viable long-term strategy to deal with this. And it's something that we're going to have to develop.
Okay, for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and we were actually on the cutting edge talking about this on Inside the News about North Korea, and it seems like now we've got some military exercises happening up there, and the wacko leader there of North Korea wants to come back at us, Frank. This is interesting, isn't it?
Well, it is. Of course, the United States and the Republic of Korea have had military exercises since the Korean War, but the North Koreans have ramped up their threats and ramped them up as they have become more and more powerful in terms of military weapons. It is fascinating to note that in the 1990s, the Clinton regime, the Clinton administration, gave North Korea $4 billion in aid in return for a solemn promise from the North Korean government not to develop nuclear weapons. That didn't turn out very well, of course. The North Koreans simply took the money, ran, and developed nuclear weapons anyway. Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. It's exactly the same type of deal that we've given to Iran, and we can expect pretty much the same results. The fact of the matter is, until China actually acts on its overwhelming influence in North Korea to do something, there's nothing that we can do short of a military strike that's going to dissuade the North Koreans from going ahead and building both land-based and submarine-launched intercontinental ballistic missiles. North Korea devotes almost all of its scarce resources to the military. Their army is actually larger than the United States Army. They are developing road mobile ICBMs to prevent them from being knocked out in a preemptive attack. They're developing submarine-launched ballistic missiles. We're kind of at a precipice with North Korea at this point. We either do something now one way or the other, or we forever are going to be hostage to North Korean threats. Remember, in asymmetrical warfare, the North Koreans don't have to have as many missiles as we do or to have a nuclear force as large as America's. One or two nuclear bombs detonated directly over the center of the United States could cause an electromagnetic pulse, which could pretty much cripple the entire country's electronic grid. That's devastating, and we're going to be held hostage from a madman in North Korea because we failed to act already.
What is also scary is the fact that it's no longer a triad of nations that want to get into to the United States, in other words, destroy us, but North Korea, China, Iran, Russia, and there may be one or two more in there, Ben, that I did not list, but they all have their sights set on us, and Iran especially even wants to go after Israel.
Well, absolutely, and we do have a developing triad or axis of evil, if you will, that is starting to include Russia once again. It's interesting, these war games going on in Korea right now, they're very large. They involve 300,000 South Korean troops, about 20,000 U.S. troops, all maneuvering, all practicing preemptive strikes. These are annual games. They happen every fall. They're called Full Eagle. What's interesting to me is that this year, Russia has denounced these exercises, and in a very clear positioning behind the regime in North Korea, which I find to be troubling. And it's part of this growing axis, really led by Moscow, by Putin, who is growing his allies throughout the Middle East, throughout Asia. There's a rapprochement between China and Russia. Obviously, Moscow has become the power right now in the Middle East, backing the Assad regime, backing Iran, and certainly aligned with the Shia movement in the Middle East. The problem is that, in addition to that, we have, by vacating our role in the Middle East, we have seen the really disturbing development that powers in the Middle East that have traditionally been aligned with us very closely, including Israel, including Saudi Arabia, have now gone to Moscow to pay homage to Vladimir Putin because they feel they no longer have a partner in Washington. So our influence has really been damaged quite severely. We're going to pay an increasing price for this. We see the issues as these impact Europe, with the immigration crisis going on there, and what that does for Europe over time, what that means for Europe. So there's far-flung ramifications at a time when we are scaling back our military budget and our ability to react to any of this. So we really have left a monumental challenge for the next president of the United States, whoever that will be.
Okay, in about 45 seconds, I don't know if you can do it, Ben, and then I'm going to toss it back to Frank. Just briefly, the migrant crisis in Europe.
Well, look, it continues to be a huge issue. The fall is coming up. The spring is coming up, and a new wave of immigration is expected as the weather improves and people can move throughout Europe. So there'll be a new wave of migrants trying to hit the beaches of Italy and Greece.
Frank, your comments.
I want to go back to what Ben was saying before about Russia and North Korea. There has been a radical paradigm shift. Since 1945, we had been used to the fact that the United States and what became its NATO allies were the most powerful military force on the earth and pretty much superior to anything our opponents could put together. That is no longer true. The most powerful military force on the planet is the growing alliance between Russia, China, Iran, and apparently North Korea as well. It's something we have never faced before as a nation or as a culture. It is going to be the story of the next probably 50 years until something radical changes. But what seems most striking about all of it is that Washington, particularly the White House, continues to be utterly blind or uncaring about that fact, that America is endangered as never before. Even in the face of this radical and growing danger, the White House continues to try to cut the Pentagon budget and continues to ignore vital national security issues. It is something stunning. We have had presidents that perhaps were less oriented towards defense than others, but never before in American history have we had a president that is, and I say this advisedly, utterly negligent when it comes to the national security of the United States.
Well, we're going to leave it there, and we're going to come back with domestic issues after the top of the hour as we go deeper inside the news. We'll be back.